the AI Kubernetes Show.
Hello, and welcome to the AI Kubernetes Show. We're coming to you live in Atlanta from KubeCon on the expo show floor, where we are digging into the state of AI, the state of platform engineering, how these interact, what is changing. I am your host, William Chia, and I'm very excited to have with me as a guest today, Grant Miller, who is the CEO of Replicated and the creator of Enterprise Ready. Grant, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me. Excited to be here.
We've been having a lot of conversations around all of the ways that AI is disrupting things, making things better. From your perspective, as a company leader, where do you sit on the pendulum? More disruption or more benefit?
I'm a huge fan. I'm all in on AI. Replicated's all in on AI. I think overall, personally, I'm actually a pretty crappy developer. I taught myself how to program 15 years ago, and I didn't really do a lot of production coding at Replicated. I was COing, right? I was go-to-market. I was doing those things. And then about a year ago, I really started to get into first just prototyping tools with Bolt and trying things out. And then eventually I was like, you know what? I'm going to make some front-end changes. And so I started using Cursor to make some changes. And then eventually I was writing Go code and doing, making new handlers and doing all the things with, Claude Code and Cursor. And so there was a time period at Replicated where I was probably one of the most productive engineers, or at least prolific. Luckily, I didn't have to do a lot of code reviews. So I would CEO in the morning, and then I would write code all day long. But I think it's so foundationally important to our industry. I actually made all of our leaders make at least one PR with AI, because I said, if you're a engineering manager and you learned how to do programming 15 years ago, but you've been managing for 10 years, I was like, everything has changed. So you need to get back on the production floor and actually get in and write code with these new tools to understand what it's like. And so I think that everyone, all leaders, CEOs, CTOs, PMs, SEs, everyone should be spending time in these coding tools and making contributions just to get up to date.
I love this so much. I hear two kind of themes out of this. One is the idea that everyone in your org needs customer empathy. And when your customers, software developers, if the last time you deployed to production was 15 years ago, you need to have some of this. At one org I was in, we called it wearing our customers' shoes. Mm-hmm. Absolutely love that. But this story of, I'm a CEO of a company, yeah, I'm an engineer, but I don't do it too much. And you were not making PRs 2 years ago.
Yeah, 2 years ago, not at all.
But now all of a sudden, with the current proliferation of tooling and what makes it available, now this makes it a realistic, feasible thing for a CEO, leader of an organization, to do your CEOing,
for sure,
but also contribute in this way that gives you customer empathy.
Customer empathy, as well as, I think, one of my other pieces here with AI is that engineering velocity is basically a core differentiator, because we can do so much now. If you can't move incredibly fast as an engineering org to respond to customer needs, you're going to die, right? And I think when you look at any massive kind of creative destruction, this kind of idea of disruption, well, you have to adjust to the new pace. And the pace of AI, we used to think that the Kubernetes ecosystem was high paced, and we'd be like, oh no, there's another KubeCon. I wonder what AWS might launch. Now it's every week there's some new core innovation. So the pace of change has stepped up by an order of magnitude or two. And so engineering velocity is a core thing that differentiates any technology company's ability to execute. And so what I realized is that as an engineering leader of a technology company, I needed to get my hands on the keyboard to understand what would allow us to move faster. What would make our team that much better, and what were the challenges they were going to face using AI, right? Like what kind of tests did it write? What kind of architecture did it create? How was it interfacing with our CI? How would, whatever questions you might have, I think you have to get on the production floor in order to get those answers.
Not just wearing your customer's shoes, wearing your team's shoes.
Exactly, yeah.
Leadership empathy for the folks that are doing the work every day.
Exactly.
This highly resonates with me. A CEO I admire says, like everybody gets their hand, rolls up their sleeves.
Yeah.
And so in this age of the AI tooling, this is something that you've taken on personally, leading by example, and then made your whole exec team do, which I love as well.
Yeah. But it's so fun too. It's like, that's the other part, is you realize this is actually, if you are a high agency person, this is like an incredible time to be doing these things, because at any moment I can be like, I don't need to put in a story. I just go work with Claude and submit the PR, right? And it's not just like a small UI fix. Like I can, I integrate, a customer needed SCIM integration. Our SAML, right, was just doing SAML auth, and we needed SCIM for provisioning. And so I just did that over the course of 2 or 3 days. And that would not have been possible or feasible. It probably wouldn't have gotten scheduled before. And so I can respond to customers, to your point, because I am so quickly available and able to make these contributions.
So you're definitely in camp acceleration.
Yeah.
I think this resonates with me as well. To your point that the pace of the velocity, the engineering velocity, is competitive differentiation.
Yep.
And so with all of this new pace of code shipping, and this is great, my CEO just did 5 PRs.
Yeah.
What does that do to your ops team? What does that do to your platform team?
Yeah. So for the most part, at least the PRs that I was shipping, I wasn't changing a lot of architecture, adding a lot of new kind of components in. So kind of just extending on to the existing architecture, which interestingly creates its own problems, because I think oftentimes what happened in engineering orgs is you kind of bolt on little features on top of your core thing. And then eventually you would get back in there and refactor and re-architect, and maybe you'd add a queue in, or you'd add in some caching or something else. Now, the AIs are not that sophisticated. They're not going to try to re-architect or re-platform you or add in new components even. And so we end up pretty quickly expanding these application footprints to be somewhat like Frankenstein-y, right? And so I think that maybe the key thing that it does is it increases the pace at which our platform team has to look at what's happening with, the observability stack in terms of what are things being responsive, are things slow, what do we need to change, and giving us that feedback, right? So we'd be kind of building new dashboards based on all the things we're adding, and then need to be able well, why is that page load taking 10 seconds, and figure out how to fix those things. So it definitely increases the amount of surface area that they're covering, as well as the need to kind of be able to maybe do more interesting troubleshooting and kind of help drive recommendations back into the team. And then, to be frank, not to me, because I'm not going to make that change. Somebody else on the team is going to make that bigger change. So,
well, yeah, I think this is system pressure. Both this kind of Frankenstein, growth in these kind of areas that is without, your chief architect designing it that way. So this can help you move very, very quickly, but ends up in this hodgepodge of things. So that creates then pressure on troubleshooting, different things done in different ways. And then the load increase also puts pressure on the system.
Yeah.
So how do, and I don't think that this is unique. I think every org is running that way or wants to, or run at higher velocity, but then putting additional pressure on the platform or organization.
Yeah.
So how do you think platform organizations, certainly, keeping observability top notch is a place to start, but what do you think they need to do, process wise, staffing wise, organizationally, thought process?
Yeah. I mean, it's interesting because it exposes a lot of different things. Clearly observability and having that visibility is important. The other area that it really made a big difference is just our pipelines, our CI pipelines, and how we were because to be honest, when I first started, I'd be like, why does it take 40 minutes for my commit to actually get all the way to production? And so I felt like that was too painful. So then we would put more platform engineering time into, making those adjustments and fixing tests and fixing, how we do integration tests, or what was actually happening on end-to-end tests, or, where was the flakiness? And so the team spent a lot of time there. We spent a lot of time doing, architecture reviews in order to make changes that we needed. But it was, we talk about this as both iteration speed total, right? Which is like, how long does it take for a customer request to come in and for us to turn that into a product, change? And then that breaks down into a combination of like capacity, which is how much time do you have for engineers to work on features versus bugs and chores and other things. And then cycle time, which is how quickly can I make changes locally and get those and see those happening, and then get those into the tests. How fast can I run the tests locally? So we've thought about a lot of these different areas, and all of these pieces, I think platform engineering has, from the development environment to making sure that's easy to run and fast and can, reload correctly, all the way to, when it's running in production with observability. So and then potentially one thing you're kind of making me think of is that, like, because I'm putting the executive team through this process, there is an increasing amount of pressure to actually make this a really good experience. Because I think that that with AI, more people need to be able to contribute, right? So it's not just a small set of kind of core engineers who work on this code base every day and kind of know all the ins and outs, but instead it's going to be this like expanded group, right? So our solutions engineer leader, he's making, PRs frequently. I'm making PRs frequently. Other product managers making PRs frequently. And so you have this broader group that's contributing, which means the development experience has to be pretty top notch in order for everyone to be able to do so.
You need some amount of homogeneity and also like low barrier to entry in order to expand the surface area of contributors within your organization.
Yeah, and you need it to be like somewhat, I think a lot of times there becomes this tacit knowledge of like how to run the dev environment, or how to oh, that error, just do this, run this command. Oh, that thing, like just do this, right? So there's all these little things, and you can't really have that to be true if you are trying to get a broader group of people to contribute.
I've been in open source for 15 years. This makes me think like you were running your organization like an open source project.
Oh, interesting. Yeah.
Like, how do we, because if your project is like, oh, well, there's this bug and it's like so-and-so is the only one that knows how to do that.
Right.
You can't get contributors.
Yeah.
So by standardizing things, by documenting things, by getting out of somebody's head and, almost in a Kubernetes parlance, like a pets versus cattle way, just making everything very repeatable.
It's true. Yeah.
You're making your dev process repeatable.
Far more documentation. The README's got a lot better.
Okay.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
And and something I'm curious about is sometimes there can be some type of pressure towards, we're building a platform, and all the platform engineers that I know and all of like the dev experience engineers, they have a lot of pride in their work. They are always putting forward their best effort. Although there's always trade-offs, right? Mm-hmm. So like there's always the team that gets like less attention. We give them less attention, and this team this is the cash cow product, they get more attention. But I imagine if the platform team is building a dev experience for the executives, there's now this additional pressure on the quality of that experience, which the way I'm going to interpret that is I'm going to say, you're treating every engineer like an executive. They deserve an executive level.
Exactly.
I think that
that's the best. You're a good marketer. It's good branding.
Well, hey, I concur. I love engineers, and I believe that every engineer deserves executive level experience, like top notch.
Exactly. Yeah, the VIP experience.
VIP. Every engineer is a VIP in my book. I'm super curious in terms of your customer base.
Yeah.
And the ways that either they're adopting AI, or the ways that maybe you're collaborating with them.
Yeah.
What's like a challenge you see them run into, and Is it outstanding? Have you come up with a fix for it? Are you halfway there? Like, what's a challenge you come across in your customer base?
Yeah, sure. So we enable software vendors to distribute their applications into like customer controlled environments, right? And so in today's world, most of our new customers are actually AI vendors, right? So folks like Crew AI, Cohere, Protect AI, they're using our tooling to distribute into a end customer, like an enterprise on-prem environment.
Okay, on-prem, not just like a VPC somewhere.
Could be a VPC, kind of like self-hosted, doesn't really matter, right? So you were GitLab, right? That idea, the tooling that the GitLab team built for distribution, we have that any software team can use for distribute their products, right?
Okay.
Licensing, update, install, reporting, et cetera.
So you're enabling your customers to deploy into their customer controlled environments.
Right. And a lot of those are AI companies. So first of all, the demand for AI to be self-hosted is far above traditional SaaS, right? Just because there's these AI applications are so data hungry. So you're seeing like, a lot of these AI tools when they're getting adopted in the enterprise need to be deployed on-prem. The other thing that's really interesting, kind of, and that's quite challenging because oftentimes if it's a model, it's quite large, right? So, and there's not really great standardization around how should you distribute large models that need to be updated frequently. Some are using OCI, which is interesting. And so that's become sort of like a somewhat of a pattern that we see from some customers. Because it's great for artifact delivery in general. Other thing that we're seeing is that a lot of these companies still, to your point, are going into a VPC and might require some additional cloud services. So I think now more than like 5 or 10 years ago, they're also distributing Terraform or some other kind of like, cloud formation alongside of their application. And realistically, those tools are not quite as good with like to be written by Claude Code or by, like it's not quite like a TypeScript or a Go backend. It's kind of like it's a little bit more nuanced. It's hard to really, it's not like a UI where you just look at it, that it's right. So validating, the Terraform or the Helm manifest or any of those things are correct is a lot harder than just like an app that you might be building.
This makes a lot of sense to me. The analogy I use is CSS.
Yeah.
And I don't know if this, so one of the ideas is like, why does any AI code gen tool write horrible CSS? Like the answer is because there's so much horrible CSS. Right? Like the people who can like write good CSS, there's just a handful in the world. And then everybody else, like you and me, we write horrible CSS. So it's just trained on bad.
You've seen my CSS.
You've seen mine.
Yeah.
So LLMs need things at scale in order to replicate something. And when you have something like a Helm chart, which there's certainly many of them, but not compared to like JavaScript files or Python files. So the amount of Python they're trained on, and the amount of JavaScript, the amount of Ruby is vast compared to the amount of, say, Helm charts or, these other smaller niche things. So then the LLM's ability to generate that faithfully and done well is diminished. So this is kind of like you see that then manifest where, okay, they try to go do this and they're trying to use AI code gen to generate the YAML and it doesn't work as well as generating the SPA app.
Yeah, so I like that, but I'll give you a different take.
Yeah, please do.
And the different take is, this is actually somewhat stolen from like Bology to some degree, right? So crypto guy, like this guy Bology.
Okay.
And what that is that the thing that a lot of these AI tools are good at is basically like, he'll call it front end, right? So it's less about the CSS, it's more about just like the app working. And that's because as a human, when you develop an app, it's like visual. I can see that it works. And like humans are very visual in terms of, I can spot, you think about those games, what's the difference, right? Find the small, minute detail, it's different. We can spot those things very quickly with our eyes. So like we basically have a validation loop, right? Which is our eyes. And when it comes to a backend, even that's a little bit easier where it's like, I can curl some quick endpoint and does it get like the expected response? I can kind of validate that quite quickly visually. Now, when you're trying to take a Helm chart and you've got a values file over here and you got these 14 templated, manifests, and there's like, they're all filled in differently and there's kind of like conditionals. Now how do I validate that that's correct? That's
does it
correct?
look right?
Yeah, I can't. No one can just look at a Helm chart in its entirety, the 2,000 line YAML, and be like, that looks good. So we lack as humans the ability to like quickly validate these and that it's going to work. So we end up needing to run them through validation loops and do other things. But then because Helm is such a flexible thing, or because Terraform's so flexible, there's so many different permutations of values that you could pass in that might create different outcomes. And so it's not even like hitting a single endpoint where you expect a response that fits this kind of JSON, right? It's kind of like, well, it could do anything, right? It's like I hit this with these values. And so I think that's what actually makes it really hard, is the validation loop is just not intuitive, and there's not really a clear one out there today for such a matrices of complexity.
Okay, I deeply love this. As a hobby, I play guitar and I sing.
Okay.
And in those communities, the musicians community, people always talk about how much easier it is to learn guitar than it is to learn to sing. And the answer all the time is because you can see what your fingers are doing. You cannot see your vocal cords.
Yeah.
And it's infinitely harder to learn to sing than to play guitar. Infinitely harder to validate YAML manifest versus like, is the UI correct?
Right.
I really love that analogy. So it's the validation loop that is difficult.
Yeah.
How do you attack that? What are you trying? Do you have an answer for that? Are you still figuring it out?
So, I mean, we're still figuring it out as part of the answer.
Okay.
And you know, when we built this whole compatibility matrix, which will spin up, 100 clusters in seconds in order to like run different, Helm applies or templates on. And so we're trying to do some real world validation with these feedback loops. We're trying to, you can do a Helm template or a dry run or do some of these things to get it out there, but it's really hard to know, again, what's valid and what's not. So I think we need, like in my mind, the two kind of most complex parts about great AI like code generation is basically testing and validation. Like, how do you test? If you had enough testing, you could just, everything can work, right? And you can know that it worked, you know that it wasn't broken. If you had enough validation, you can do the same thing. So those two things kind of combined together would allow you to then, use a spec to then give the AI more guidance, and then you have validation and testing to kind of verify the output, and then you do the feedback loop to loop those things back in. But that's quite hard.
This becomes quite difficult. Where are you starting? Like, so where do you start there? Like, okay, I'm an org. I've got, I'm a cloud native organization. I've got my, I'm a platform team. I'm deploying YAML manifests. It's not the same for me to code generate my stuff versus the dev team. And I gotta have to do all the things you just said in order to really test and validate it. Where's like the first step? Where do you start in that mix?
Yeah, it's hard. And we tried to solve this. It's actually even at last KubeCon, we launched this thing called chartsmith.ai, which was trying to help people develop Helm charts with AI. And we open sourced it because like ultimately it's just a really hard problem. So we'd love, maybe check out Chartsmith and contribute to that, right? Help us try to do this validation loop. I don't know. It's not a solved problem yet. I think, and there's plenty of people out here trying to do AI SRE and these things. And I think that's going to be some combination of like watching the logs and watching observability and trying to understand what's happening. So, I mean, there's definitely some amount of like, you need to get it running potentially. And then, maybe people use staging environments again, right? So they'll finally get back to staging, not just using your production as my staging, right? So we'll see.
Yeah, I've heard it both ways. I've heard of folks that are now with AI tooling and things that they just ship straight to production and everything's a canary and a feature flag. And
yeah, sure, yeah.
But then also, now there's even more environments and even like, simulated environments like code sim AI environments that you don't even need to deploy to production, but AI is either stepping through your code or doing some amount of simulation. So even this idea, like even you're just saying, hey, this is not a solved problem. We have an open source project. And with any new technology shift, there's this kind of promise of new problems to solve and new jobs to create.
For sure.
Is there, I'm curious if you're seeing that in any other areas of like, this is an unsolved problem, or this is like a new surface area for people that they need to now go learn this new thing. And the quintessential one is like, like be a prompt engineer or that, but I'm curious, like, it's kind of like it's off the wall, just like you see like
So,
the unsolved
I mean,
problem or the surface area.
I think that there are the beautiful thing about capitalism and this kind of disruption is that every time we've seen this in the past, it creates even more opportunity.
Mm-hmm.
And the agricultural revolution frees people up. The industrial revolution frees people up. Like all these different things free people up to do different jobs. And so, I think my best advice on this is like the unsolved. Like that's the beauty of the unsolved problems. We don't even know what most of the problems will be yet, right? We're still in the early innings of like figuring out how to apply all of this. I'm not like I'm an accelerationist in terms of AI, in terms of like, but I think about myself as a realist at the same time. I don't think it's going to take all the jobs. I also don't think that it's like useless. So I think there's somewhere in the middle. We've kind of hit this like, Goldilocks zone, as some people call it, which is it's very effective. It's going to create a lot of productivity, but it's not going to like totally take all jobs from everybody, right? And so I think there's going to be plenty of interesting problems to solve and new things to discover, and hopefully, testing, validation, probably key areas. I don't know. We'll see what else comes up.
Well, there's been a really fun conversation. Your takes have been really interesting. A lot of folks we've had sharing interesting things, and definitely enjoyed hearing from you. For the folks in the audience that want to connect with you, find you on social, learn more about Replicated, where can they find you? How can they follow
so replicated.com, enterpriseready.io. I've got a podcast called the Enterprise Ready Podcast. I'm on Twitter at Grant M, so you can find me there.
Awesome. Grant, it has been a privilege to have you on the show.
Thank you so much.
Hey, thanks.
Awesome.
Created by the team at buoyant.io.